Did you know dyslexia influences as many as 1 in 5 people and is a genetic difference in an individual's ability to learn and process information? As a result, dyslexic individuals have differing abilities and differing strengths in creative, problem solving, and communication skills, such as spelling, reading, and memorizing facts. Our guest today is Lynn Greenberg, and she and her son Joanthan are helping to literally rewrite the story for children with dyslexia. Lynn has focused her life on being a champion for children. As a trained attorney, Lynn spent her time in the legal world practicing family law, providing pro bono work for kids and advocating on their behalf. When her youngest son Joanthan was diagnosed with dyslexia, becoming his advocate came easy. Together, now retired Lynn, I think, and adult Joanthan have created a children's book, Robbie, the Dyslexic Taxi and the Airport Adventure. This was a book born out of Lynn's desire for neurodivergent children to be able to see themselves in characters in a storyline. That was a long intro that I made Lynn sit uncomfortably listening to.
Well, you know.
Welcome, Lynn. Really looking forward to our conversation and thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. This is great.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks.
really looking forward to our conversation. So let's start by you telling us a little bit about yourself, just sort of like high level, your background. Like I mentioned that you're an attorney, you're now retired. So what has your background been like up to this point?
So I am a very retired attorney.
Okay, very retired.
Very retired, or some might say reformed, but I am a very retired attorney. And I stopped practicing when John was little.
Okay.
It was just a lot. I have three much older children, and I felt like I wasn't giving my job the attention it needed. I had thought maybe I'd go back, but then changed my mind. But I had other careers, obviously a mom and now a grandma. And I had a cookie business for a while. I had, different things along the way. But especially when John was diagnosed, it became something that I knew would take a lot more of my time, and felt that the best thing I could do was be home for my family. So that's how it started. John's 25 now, and he is getting his master's in fine arts.
Wow.
And so it's been a wonderful, scary, big learning curve process. And we're at this end of it, and we wanted to be able to share some of the things we've learned along the way.
Yeah, fantastic. Would you be able to share with us a little bit about what it was like for you when Joanthan was growing up, when you kind of discovered that there was, something going on that wasn't kind of fitting the mold, I guess.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? When did it happen? What were some of the things that you noticed?
So, as I said, I have three much older children.
Okay.
And so, I think anyone with kids or any association with children will know that people learn differently. But I knew that John was missing some of the cues that most children will hit as they start growing up. I could tell he was super smart because he could tell me every Thomas the Tank Engine name, but not tell me that Thomas started with the letter T. Things like that. I just had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. And, his teachers would say, oh, he's a boy, he's slow, he's this, he's that. And none of that resonated with me. I knew my child, and that just didn't sound right. And so I started, reading and exploring. Back then, computers weren't quite what they are, online learning, there were no Facebook groups. There was, I needed to start reaching out to read books. I'd go to the library. I had a very good friend who was a pediatrician, started discussing things with her. And I, came to a point where I realized that I needed to maybe have him tested because the school wouldn't do that. And I found someone through my pediatrician who did test him, and sure enough, classic dyslexic, super smart, just was going to need how to learn to read and write differently, with some ADHD attached to it. So, there was the package, but pretty classic.
Okay.
So, yeah.
How old was Jonathan when that all started to unfold?
So I would say when he was probably, you know, three-ish,
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
knew I knew something was off. He was the child who didn't want to watch Sesame Street or sing the ABC song. I in my gut felt that something wasn't quite right. And then by the time he got to kindergarten, I was pretty sure, but I didn't know what dyslexia was.
Hmm.
So I had to really start understanding it. By six, I knew that I would wanted him to be able to be tested, and the school, like I said, wouldn't do that. And so I did have him tested, and so I knew by six that he was dyslexic.
Okay. And what sort of things do they do? Do they just do some standard like things that they expect a child of that age to be able to do, or is it a bit more complex than that?
You mean in school? How
To
did I know?
well, to determine that he was
Hmm.
dyslexic.
So his teacher kept saying he's slow. I don't
Mm.
understand. He memorizes the story, but why can't he read it? And I'm like, you're the teacher. So, and he was pulled out, for learning help. And, unfortunately, at least, here, our learning specialists are so inundated, they really can't possibly teach all the things that they're supposed to know. They just can't. So I started investigating what a better way for John to learn would be. He didn't like getting pulled out, it wasn't helping him. And we found, actually, through the person who did test him, we found a school that is about 45 minutes away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he applied and got in, and they take kids who are dyslexic or have a language-based learning difference. They have to, be smart kids that they can teach. And then we were thrilled when he got in, but we knew that it was going to be a family decision to get him there. It's a private school, so we were going to have to eat a lot of peanut butter and jelly. We knew that we would have to drive. I would have to drive him. And as I said, we had, much older children. So how was that going to be? And we came together as a family and decided that it was very important. And so when he was in second grade, I started to take him to the school every day. And
Wow.
within no time, he could do the ABCs, and he started to learn, and because of their way of teaching.
That's
Yeah.
quite extraordinary, isn't it? Because I think it would be really easy, like you said, for him to have slipped through the cracks, like as just a slow kid or like not, you know, not keeping up. And
Right.
my little boy has had some reading difficulties. He hasn't been diagnosed with dyslexia, but he's definitely hasn't didn't keep up. But it started to show more and more. But he was in that middle range where like he was just getting further and further behind because there's more expectation that you need to read instructions and for every topic.
Right.
But yeah, but it didn't show up enough for them to red flag it. And yeah, it could easily fall through the cracks. But you've kind of, through your discovery, there is actually a solution for kids with dyslexia. And there's a teaching strategy that actually works, which is amazing.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. So you obviously faced some challenges with travel, the impacts that was going to have on your family, just in
Yes.
terms of time and that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
How did Jonathan adapt to that environment? Did he really thrive in that environment?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Because, when he was little, and I think it's important, you say, how did you know? And I think it's really important for parents to not only the teachers are trying, they're doing their best, but you really have to know your child. You have to listen. You have to see what they're saying to you and what they're not saying to you. The nonverbal cues are pretty important. I would get reports that John was acting out, and I'm
Ah,
like, that's not my kid. And I came to realize he was acting out because he was embarrassed.
mm,
He felt badly, and it was easier to act out than to sit and try to read the book that he couldn't. Um, so, I think it's really important to listen to your child on all sorts of levels. And, to find the right way to teach your child. Everyone learns differently, but for us, we have found that the Orton-Gillingham method is the best way to teach a dyslexic child, and that's what the school uses.
okay.
Other people go with different methods, but every child that they teach in this school, and they've been around for a long time, has been successful, to a greater or lesser degree, but this is a tried and true method.
Mm, yeah, great. I'm going to look that up. um, I know that we're talking like this is, Jonathan's now 25 and we're here to talk about your book, but I think it's really important
I
for
didn't answer. Sorry, I didn't even answer
No,
your
no, no,
question.
no,
I'm
no.
so
I think
sorry.
you did. I
I
think
like
you
went
did.
off. Yeah.
No, I just thought you're probably thinking, well, when are we going to get onto the book? Because I'm asking you
Yeah.
all these questions about dyslexia and some of the challenges that you faced, and I think it's really important because we are seeing it, and like your desire to help people through the book that you've written and future books is really to help with that process, right? To help people better understand their own children, to help support the children that might be having these experiences, and probably to help the adults as well understand
Yeah.
better what a
Yeah.
child might be experiencing. So I do want to get onto the book, but I've just got a couple more
Sure.
questions. Can
Absolutely.
you tell us about dyslexia? Because I read in your notes that it's a genetic, it can be a genetic
Hmm.
disposition, I suppose you might call it. And also there's some reference to neurodivergence. So is there a connection with that? Like what, can you kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of what dyslexia presents as and how that connects with neurodivergence or what that means?
So I think there's so much more of a conversation for people to discuss differences. Back when Jonathan was little, there was a lot of hush hush, you can't talk about differences for your child because I think a lot of people thought that it was a reflection on them and it might make them less than, instead of trying to understand that your child has a unique personality, has a unique brain, and you need to see your child for who he or she or they are. And for us, I did not know, but my husband's grandmother was dyslexic. Nobody knew that until until John was going to the school, and then it came out. It turned out there were people on my father's side of the family that were dyslexic that nobody talked about. And so it definitely can run in families. There's a pretty high percentage of people with dyslexia, and like as you said, just a lot aren't diagnosed. So families may not know it. I think, as I said, there are more conversations now, but even so, people just may not know because their parents or grandparents didn't know. I've had people come up to me and as adults and say, "Oh my God, I did not know this is totally who I was as a child, and now I have a name for it." Um, and neurodivergent is your brain, different people's brain, everyone's brain works a little different. And different neurodivergent issues, there's dyslexia, dysgraphia, where you have trouble writing, dyscalculia, where you have trouble with math. People have ADHD and ADD, and all of those fall under the heading of neurodivergence. And a lot of the people with dyslexia or with anything else have what they call comorbidities. So my child with dyslexia also has ADHD. So different people have maybe not just one thing. And I think it's really important to assess what your child has or what you as an adult have, and how best to treat. And there might be different ways of going about it. Some people believe in medication for ADHD, some don't. And I think you have to find out what's best for your child. And it might take a little bit of time and experimenting to just find the right mix of ways to handle whatever the issue might be.
Yeah, definitely. There was a few things that came up there. Excuse me. I thought it was quite interesting. Like, and I think it's probably there's more awareness around these kind of issues now than there were. But there's definitely that kind of like, I guess, fear, discomfort that your child might be stupid. And that's kind of like a societal, or has been, it's probably not as much now. But because if they don't match up to the year that they're in, the class that they're in, they're not ticking the boxes, they can be considered, yeah, less than, right?
Right.
So you're on a mission to change that, which is great.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely as a parent, taking ownership and embracing that difference rather than worrying about what it what people might think is
Yes.
really important. And actually one of the reasons that we started homeschooling was because of our experience with Louis, and he's thriving. So is dyslexia something you grow out of? Because you
No.
said no. Because so it's like learning how so for a dyslexic person, it's learning how to learn, a different way of learning. It's a different system of
100%.
learning. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
So, like I can't do math. Doesn't matter. Maybe
Okay,
if they had tested me back in the day,
yeah.
I'm happy I get 2 + 2. Yeah. So for John, I think when we had him tested and we gave it a name, I think there was a sense of relief, like, oh,
Mm,
I'm not stupid. There is a reason I'm having trouble. And I think that was important. And that started our journey on how best to teach him. And, when he got to the school, when he looked around and went, wow, I am one of how many? And
mm,
everyone is like me. And it was such a sense of relief. And I think, every one of the kids there that he still keeps in touch with, and there are quite a few. One went into, to space engineering, one writes plays, one the people who are dyslexic, I have found, are, super creative, smart,
mm,
empathetic. They use their dyslexia as a superpower. And for John, art was a way he could express himself before he could read and write. And so for him, he is now actually getting his master's in fine art. He's, an amazing artist, and a kind and empathetic person. And you know, I think it's really important. I have seen a lot of parents, not my child, that's not my kid, when they are
mm.
told what the diagnosis is. And I think that's a shame, because then your child doesn't get to be who they need to be and how they will learn the way they need to learn. So, I think
Yeah,
it's important to embrace those differences, because look at Richard Branson. He's, the head of the owner of this huge corporation. He's dyslexic. You have writers and princes and princesses and queens, and they're just, everyone is their own unique person, and I think we need to learn to embrace that.
yeah. And you can imagine for a child, if they're not included or if they're seen as different,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother pressure, isn't it? It's like they're already having the pressure of difficulty in keeping
Yes.
up or learning, and then they've got the pressure of conforming to like other people's expectations. So being in a group of people that do accept you for who you are is super important, and probably a
Absolutely.
very important message for us grown-ups as well, right?
I think so. Yes.
So you've talked about the qualities and superpowers of someone with dyslexia: creativity,
Mhm.
really good memory, spelling.
Really good. Good thing there's spell check for John. But you never grow out of, you asked, you don't grow out of a neurodivergent issue. You just need to learn how to learn differently.
Yeah.
There were studies done where they do MRIs of the brain. They're called
Okay.
functional MRIs. And they have found that different parts of your brain light up if you're a normal reader.
Okay.
When you're dyslexic, those parts of your brain don't light up. And they need to then, sort of circumvent those and learn to teach you differently. And once, if they did one on John, which they didn't, but any dyslexic reader, once they learn how to read, the spots in the brain that light up for a normal reader will never light up for a
Huh.
dyslexic. They've just learned how to use their neural pathways in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's why he learned so successfully.
Wow. That's great. And you've so let's get on to the book. So this is obviously
Okay.
embracing Jonathan's creativity,
Mhm.
your passion for getting it out there that we need to, these kids need to be more accepted, and also the other kids, the
Yeah,
normal kids need to be more
right.
accepting and understand. But it's almost like if when we understand something, then we can
Yeah.
better work together, right?
Better people.
We
Yeah,
can be better people. So we've got the book,
we
Robbie the
do.
Dyslexic Taxi and the
Yeah.
Airport Adventure. How did you? There it
Thanks,
is.
Bobby.
It's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
Just before we start, what age would you say that this is written for, and why did you choose that sort of age?
So I would say it would be for like the, 3 to 6,
Yep.
but for kids who are, dyslexic, maybe a little bit older because they still are learning or trying to learn how to read. And we picked it because John never saw himself in a book when he was little.
Ah,
And he thought, during COVID, we were all in lockdown, and he was home as an art major from college, and it's pretty hard to do art virtually. And so, he was doing things but had time on his hands. And at the time, I was reading to my grandchildren, like over FaceTime, I'd be reading them books. And we sort of came up with this idea,
great.
how could we combine that? And that's how Robbie grew. So.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
So some good things came out of the lockdown.
Some good things, yeah. A little more cooking, some baking, and
Yeah,
Robbie.
great. Um, okay, so you decided to work on that project together.
Mhm.
How did it go? Like, was it all pretty free flowing, or like who came up with the ideas and
So
who came
we
up with
at
Robbie?
first, well, Robbie is actually his middle name is Robert, and so he decided that's how Robbie the name
Okay,
came.
yeah.
And so the names in the book are family members, but it
Ah,
just started, right.
cute.
So it started as, yeah, I think his love of trains and cars and anything that moved as a child is how we came up with a taxi. And then we started, what would happen if this taxi had to get someplace and couldn't read the street signs? How would that be? And we started talking about it and writing it. And originally I was just going to write the book and he was going to illustrate it. But then, he had a very important point of view, so we co-authored it. And I did not help with the pictures because I do stick figures and that's about it. So he did all the illustrations. And it was kind of for fun at first, and it still was fun, but I have a friend who is a book designer. And when we were finished, I showed her and I thought, tell me the truth. What do you think? And she said, oh my God, it's adorable. And she helped us put it together and we published it and have had an amazing, I mean, such a reception. Here I am talking to you in
Yeah.
Australia. I'm in Connecticut in the United States. So that says something. And I think the message is important, as you said, for not just children to see themselves, but children who don't understand to maybe start understanding,
Mm.
or parents or educators or, pediatricians, people who deal with children in different ways. And we've had such an amazing response that we are now going to write a whole series, and we're almost done with the next book. It's about ADHD, and it'll be
Ah.
the same characters and, you know, but adding a new one and exploring how to, reach lots of different children and families and in a positive way.
Yeah, great. It's a beautifully illustrated book. And so you were kind enough to send me a copy, and interestingly, like, personal reflection, it's very simple, but the message is very clear, and it's something that you might not consider, right? Even if we might have an expectation of what it is for someone to be dyslexic, they can't read, or they see words back to front, or whatever it might be. But that, when you put it into the context of how, you know, routine's really important.
Mhm.
Know it, like, Robbie the taxi doesn't know his way. He's very familiar with street signs in certain parts of the city, but then he gets put into a situation where he doesn't know the way, and how that can bring up all sorts of like panic and anxiety, and that really helps you to. It was really simple, but even as an adult, like, that's something you go kind of go, oh wow, that, yeah, I didn't even think that that would be a thing. So yeah, it just sort of opens up the conversation, and would be great for any age of child, as you said. And like the fact that you could read that to a child, and if they had dyslexia, they would feel more accepted and understood.
Yes.
If you read it to a child who doesn't, but they've got a friend who has, or someone in their class, that they would be able to understand and open up a conversation about that. And as you said, for parents, educators, really understanding that. So
We've had
you've,
a positive, yeah,
yeah,
definitely. It's
it's,
up interesting conversations.
yeah, definitely. And it's so simply written. Can I ask you, just in terms of the formatting of text, because I've seen some books in the library for dyslexic kids, older kids though, and like the words are separated, like they've got bigger spaces between the words. Is that, have you done that in your book? I couldn't
So we
really.
used, yeah, not
No.
so much. Tried not to put too many words on the page, but we used a dyslexic font
Ah.
that made it easier for supposedly for dyslexics to read. Everyone always asks John, who by the way says hello. He's sorry he couldn't be
Ah,
here.
that's okay.
But he's in class. But you know, how does this dyslexic font help you? And John's like, to be honest, I don't know. I know how I see things now. So to me, it doesn't look different. I don't know what it looks like to you versus another font. Like I can see the differences when I'm looking and working. He said, but not having seen this before, I could read and write. I don't know that I would know if the difference, but we have been told there are a few different fonts, and we were told that this one is one that's very helpful for children who are trying to learn to read, who are dyslexic.
Okay, cool. And you've talked about the next book because you've had such a great reception for the current one. Have you had to do? I know you said that Jonathan also has ADHD. And so
Yes.
you've had your own experience of that in your family life as well. But have you had to do any specific research for different types of neurodivergence when you're looking at the characters in the book and how that will be kind of demonstrated in those characters?
It's a good question. I think for Robbie, we sort of went on what we knew. But now that because we honestly didn't realize we would get such an amazing reception. And so we were, writing for us, and we thought, if anyone else buys it, that would be fine. But we've had such an amazing response that we've decided it's important to do a little more research for the next book. So we are definitely, and we will not hold ourselves out as, therapists
Sure.
or educators, because that's not who we are, but we have tried to be a little more careful in our research and how we are going to portray the characters at the Creative Cab Company where they all work. So
So have you got a vision for all of those different characters? I know you're probably just taking one step at a time, but
we're taking one step at a time, trying to, work on the next character, but thinking sort of how we're going to incorporate other characters and other neurodivergent issues. Um, so, this book is going a little more slowly because John is in the middle of his graduate program, but but in the meantime, he's producing other beautiful art and participating sometimes in these wonderful conversations with people like you.
yeah.
And we go to school sometimes and read to kids and participate in different programs, which has been great. So the next book will be out by 20, hopefully a little before, but definitely by the early part of 2025.
Okay,
And
that's not
yeah,
too long.
no, not too long. And hopefully people will follow. We're on social media at the Creative Cab Company, and we have a website. We'd love to, hear from people, hear what they think, and reach out to us and if they have questions. So we'll let everyone know. We actually just came out with a Spanish version
Oh,
of Robbie.
great. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. That's
So we're
fantastic.
we're, we're looking at different options.
Yeah, great. And so are you have you been doing anything like going into schools or libraries and kind of talking
Yes.
about this as well?
Yes, so we went back to the school where
Yeah.
John where he went treated like a rock star, and
That's like,
it
did
was
you do
so
book
great.
signing?
He did. We did book signings, and they
Yeah.
were looking honestly for his autograph, and it was really heartwarming. It was wonderful. He went there from the time he was 7 to 12, and then he went out and went to a regular a school where it wasn't just for dyslexic
Okay.
kids. Um, But I went, we often go together or separately, depending. He's in Chicago right
Ah,
now.
okay.
Um, but I went to my grandson's class a while back,
Oh, great.
and as you said, it opened up a conversation because at the time they were, younger and learning how to read and what did it mean to be dyslexic, and it opened up a really wonderful conversation. And we've, been to other schools in the area, and it's been really interesting to see these children who are, often of the age where they're learning how to read either go, huh, I didn't know that, or ooh, that could be, like questions like, how did you know? And I can't do such and such. And so I think it's a really wonderful way to open up conversations.
Yeah, definitely. Especially as there are more people than we expect. Like one in five people has dyslexia. So
Yes.
yeah, it's not a bad word. It's like
No, it should have been.
we need to know more about it.
Yes.
Well, I think that you've we've probably covered everything there is to cover when it comes to the book. I think it's yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. What yeah, what a wonderful gift that you're sharing with the world, and I'm so glad for you that it's doing so well.
Thank you.
Where can our listeners find the book? Like, we've got listeners worldwide, but obviously I'm in Australia. So is this book on Amazon? Do we get it directly from your website?
Both. So
Both.
you can go to Amazon and get it there. You can
Yeah.
go to the website Creative Cab Company
Yeah.
and buy it that way. There we have ebooks. We have it on
Okay.
Kobo and Audible. So there are different platforms, but if you don't remember that, you can go to our website or you can just, you know, go to Amazon and type in Robbie the Dyslexic Taxi and it should pop up hopefully.
Great. And we've got you in our guest directory as well. So all of your links will be included there.
Thank you.
The listeners will be able to access all of that information in one place. I
Great.
wish you the very best of luck with the continuing success of Robbie and
Yeah.
the next book that's coming out in 2025. Keep us posted.
Thank you.
I'd love to
Oh, I
hear
will.
all about it. Thank
I
you
will.
so much for taking the time, Lynn.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Bye for now.